The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the toll of a distant bell that echoed like a warning across the valley. A storm gathered in the blackened sky, and the forest swayed in violent whispers as if dreading what was about to awaken. Deep beneath the ruined chapel, an ancient tomb stirred. The stone lid trembled, dust rising as if the very air recoiled from the power inside. The voice of a forgotten knight whispered through the void, a vow etched into the bones of time. Prince Alaric stood frozen near the entrance, his cloak whipped by the rising wind. His hand gripped his sword tightly, though his heart pounded with dread. The whisper grew louder, like an oath of vengeance carried on the storm. Lady Elara stepped back, fear glimmering in her eyes, her candle flickering wildly against the biting cold. Sir Cedric said, "We should not be here. This place carries death." Yet no step backward could undo what had been set in motion. The stone lid slid aside, revealing darkness thick as ink, and from it rose the faint glow of spectral armor. The ghost knight, once betrayed, now summoned back by wrath, lifted his hollow gaze to the living. His vow was clear. Vengeance would be unleashed. The chapel shook as the storm howled louder, and Alaric stepped back, unable to steady his breathing. The hollow gaze of the ghost knight pierced him. And for a moment, silence crushed all sound. Cedric said, "This is the oath of the damned." Elara's candle died, leaving only the pale glow of the phantom armor to light the crypt. Shadows swirled unnaturally, curling like grasping hands across the walls. The knight's spectral form raised its sword of smoke, its voice echoing in words not spoken, but felt. Betrayal must be answered. Alaric's chest tightened with fear, but some force anchored him, a weight that whispered destiny into his bones. His sword trembled yet did not fall. Elara clutched his arm, whispering, "We must leave before it consumes us." Cedric shook his head, his eyes sharp, though his face betrayed dread. The storm outside cracked with thunder, rattling stone and glass. The knight's armor clanged with hollow echoes as it moved forward, its presence filling every corner. What had been legend was now terror, made fleshless. The night of vengeance had begun. The crypt groaned as though it carried the cries of the damned. Alaric held his sword tighter, though his knees threatened to buckle. The ghost knight stepped closer, and with every step, the torches dimmed as if bowing to its power. Cedric whispered, "Steel cannot break what is already broken." Elara's breath quickened, her voice shaking as she said, "Then what can we do?" The knight raised its blade high, and the storm outside roared in answer, lightning flashing with every spectral movement. Its hollow voice trembled through the stones, "Those who betrayed me will pay, and the kingdom shall bleed." Alaric's voice cracked, but he said, "I will not let you destroy what remains." The knight's gaze lingered, an emptiness deeper than death itself. In that silence, all three mortals realized they stood at the threshold of a curse that would not rest until vengeance was claimed. The storm ripped through shattered windows, scattering shards across the stone floor. Cedric pulled Alaric back as Elara stumbled, her gown dragging across the broken glass. The knight lowered its sword, its gaze lingering on them with hollow judgment. It did not strike but stepped aside, allowing their escape as though playing with fate. The silence was heavier than steel chains, and every heart pounded with dread. Cedric said, "It spares us, but why?" Alaric felt the answer rise unbidden, a whisper in his mind not his own, "Because it waits for the true betrayal." Elara cried softly, clutching her chest, her eyes brimming with terror. They fled the crypt, the ghost's burning gaze following them into the storm. The air outside was no relief, for the wind carried the whispers of the cursed oath. The knight's promise was clear. Vengeance had been unleashed, and the kingdom would tremble. They stumbled down the chapel steps, mud splashing beneath their boots as the storm grew harsher. Alaric's mind raced with the echo of the knight's vow, each word like a curse branded on his soul. Cedric muttered prayers under his breath, gripping the hilt of his sword as though it might shield him from what could not be slain. Elara pressed close to Alaric, her trembling hand clutching his sleeve as tears mixed with the rain upon her cheeks. The chapel loomed behind them, its broken tower struck by lightning, crumbling stone falling into the night. Yet the voice of the night lingered, whispering through the wind, a vow of vengeance that would not fade. Alaric raised his gaze to the storming sky and felt a weight settle upon his shoulders, a burden he had not chosen, but could not escape. The curse had awakened, and the night would never again know peace. Dawn crept over the storm-washed land, painting the broken fields with a pale light that could not erase the horrors of the night. Alaric walked in silence, his cloak soaked and heavy, each step sinking into the mud. Elara followed close, her face pale, her eyes shadowed by sleepless terror. Cedric walked behind them, his armor dulled by rain, his grip firm on the hilt of his blade, as though expecting shadows to rise again. In the distance, smoke curled from the chimneys of a village untouched by what they had seen. Alaric said they cannot know what has awakened. Fear would consume them. Cedric's voice was sharp. Fear may be their only shield. Silence is more dangerous than truth. Elara shook her head and whispered, "If the curse spreads, no village will stand." Their words died as the chapel behind them crumbled further, its tower now little more than stone dust against the rising sun. The oath of the ghost knight lingered, an invisible chain that bound Alaris's soul to a fate he never sought. They reached the edge of the forest where the path narrowed into shadows. Cedric stopped, raising his hand as though listening to whispers only he could hear. The trees groaned as if alive, their branches reaching down like claws. Elara clutched Alaric's arm, her voice trembling. "What if the night follows us?" Alaric's face tightened. "It does not need to follow. It is bound to me." Cedric frowned deeply, his eyes sharp under the dawn light. "The curse marks you, that much is clear, but curses can be broken, though not without cost." Alaric's heart sank, knowing the path ahead carried both pain and choice. Elara turned her eyes upward, the sunlight breaking weakly through the branches, her lips moving in prayer. Yet the silence that followed was heavy, as if even the forest refused to answer. As they pushed deeper into the woods, a figure stepped out from the mist. Cloaked in gray, with eyes glinting like secrets, he carried a staff bound in silver thread. Alaric raised his sword, but Cedric lowered it slowly. "Do not strike," he warned. The stranger's voice was low, steady, and haunting. "The knight you saw was once the kingdom's shield, betrayed by the very blood it swore to defend." Elara gasped, her hand rising to her lips. Alaric asked, "How do you know this?" The stranger smiled faintly. "Because I was there." The silence that followed pressed heavy on them, broken only by the rustle of branches. Cedric's jaw clenched as he muttered, "Then you are older than you seem." The figure's eyes narrowed. "Older, perhaps, but bound to the same curse that binds your fate." The cloaked man guided them to a clearing where an old stone altar stood covered in moss. He placed his hand on the cracked surface and whispered words lost to time. The stone glowed faintly, revealing etchings of knights and kings. Elara stepped closer, her eyes widening at the carvings. "It is the same armor," she whispered, "the ghost's armor." Alaric felt his breath shorten as he traced the stone symbols with his eyes, realizing the curse stretched back generations. Cedric asked sharply, "If you were there, why did you not stop it?" The man's face darkened, regret burning behind his eyes. "Because betrayal came from within, and I was blind to it." The glow dimmed, leaving only cold stone once more. Alaric clenched his jaw, his mind torn between rage and despair. The forest seemed to sigh as if mourning ancient sins. Night returned as they set camp near the altar, firelight flickering weakly against the dark. Cedric sat sharpening his blade, each stroke ringing like a warning. Elara curled near the fire, clutching her cloak, her eyes reflecting both fear and hope. Alaric stood apart, staring into the shadows beyond the flames. The cloaked man sat silently, watching him, his eyes like ancient mirrors. "You carry his burden," he said softly. Alaric's voice cracked as he answered, "I never chose it." The man nodded. "None ever do. But choice still remains, vengeance or redemption." The words struck deep, heavier than steel. Cedric looked up briefly, muttering, "Both may cost more than life." Silence fell, broken only by the crackling fire and the distant howl of a wolf. Alaric clenched his fists, staring at the flames, the curse binding itself tighter with every heartbeat. The forest path ended at a cliff overlooking the kingdom below. Smoke from distant villages curled in the wind, and the river shimmered like steel under the sun. Cedric rested his hand on Alaric's shoulder. "What you saw was not the end, but the beginning." Elara stepped closer, her voice soft. "If the curse spreads, no wall will hold it." Alaric's jaw clenched as he stared at the faraway castle. "Then we must face it before it consumes everything." The cloaked man nodded grimly. "The kingdom is blind to the rot within. Betrayal festers in its halls even now." His words chilled them, and silence stretched as the wind whipped around them. The oath of vengeance still echoed, and Alaric felt the weight of destiny pressing heavier than ever before. At the edge of the valley, they entered a ruined village. Ashes coated the ground, and charred beams jutted like broken bones. Elara covered her mouth, her voice breaking. "The curse has already reached here." Cedric scowled. "No, this is man's doing. Fire, not phantom." Alaric searched the ruins, his chest tightening at the silence of absence. The cloaked man's eyes narrowed. "But vengeance feeds on pain. This place will call to him." The wind blew through hollow windows, carrying faint whispers that chilled the blood. Alaric turned to his companions and said, "If the ghost comes here, the dead will not rest." From the ruins emerged another figure, draped in fine robes, though torn and dirtied, with sharp eyes that gleamed with false sincerity. He bowed slightly, his voice smooth. "I feared you would not come." Alaric frowned. "And who are you?" The man smiled faintly. "A friend, perhaps, one who knows the path ahead is perilous." Cedric growled, "I do not trust a shadow that smiles." Elara stepped closer, uncertain, her eyes drawn to the man's strange sigil etched on his robe. The cloaked mentor's gaze hardened. "Not all who offer help seek to save." The man raised his hands calmly. "Yet not all enemies wear darkness. Will you hear me, or face ruin blind?" The man led them deeper into the ruins, speaking of secret roads and hidden powers. His words dripped with charm, yet Cedric's eyes never softened. Elara listened, torn between trust and fear. The cloaked mentor's silence grew heavier, as though his doubts chained his tongue. Alaric's mind wrestled with every word, his heart pulled toward hope, though his instincts screamed caution. The man paused by a shattered fountain, his smile thin. "You need me more than you know. Without me, the curse will consume you." Cedric stepped forward, his voice like iron. "Or perhaps you need us more than we need you." The wind stilled, and tension clung like a blade drawn in secret. As night fell upon the ruined village, the fire of their camp cast long shadows against broken walls. The mysterious ally sat apart, his gaze flickering with secrets untold. Elara leaned toward Alaric, whispering, "Can we trust him?" Alaric's reply was low, uncertain. "I do not know." Cedric polished his blade, muttering, "A serpent smiles before it strikes." The cloaked mentor finally spoke, his voice grave. "Every choice carries cost. To walk with him may lead to salvation, or ruin." The ally turned his eyes toward the fire, a faint smirk curving his lips. The flames reflected in his eyes, bright as hidden daggers. The night deepened as their campfire dwindled to embers, and Alaric lay awake, his thoughts consumed by the vow of the ghost. The cloaked mentor stirred nearby, his voice breaking the silence. "You are torn between what you fear and what you must become." Alaric whispered, "I am no savior. I cannot even control the curse that haunts me." Cedric turned, his armor clinking softly. "A king is not made by choice but by necessity," he said firmly. Elara shifted closer, her voice low and filled with tremors. "If you surrender to despair, then the night's vengeance will consume us all." The words pierced Alaric's heart, a burden pressing heavier than steel. He clenched his fists, staring at the ashes of the fire, and for the first time allowed himself to wonder whether the curse was not a punishment, but a command. At dawn, the group reached a narrow gorge where the river roared below, mist rising in cold swirls. The bridge was shattered, forcing them to face the chasm. Cedric scowled. "We will waste precious time finding another path." Elara stepped forward, her hands trembling as she pointed to faint carvings on the rocks. "These are markings of the old order, a guide left for the chosen." The cloaked man nodded grimly. "It means the ghost was not the only one bound to an oath. Many before him fell to betrayal." Alaric's voice broke as he said, "Then what hope do I carry if even the noblest failed?" Cedric placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Hope endures not because it is certain, but because it is needed." The river below thundered, as though answering his words with defiance. They followed the markings into hidden tunnels carved beneath the gorge. Darkness pressed around them, the torches barely piercing the heavy air. Cedric led the way, his sword raised, every step echoing like a drumbeat. Elara whispered, "I feel as though something watches us." Alaric's jaw tightened as shadows shifted against the walls. Suddenly, a roar echoed through the cavern, shaking dust from the ceiling. A monstrous beast, half spectral, half flesh, slithered from the depths. The cloaked mentor shouted, "This is the guardian of betrayal. To pass you must face its judgment." Fear froze Elara, but Alaric stepped forward, his heart pounding. The beast's eyes glowed with hunger, and the curse inside Alaric stirred as if awakening in recognition. The beast lunged, its form shifting like smoke and flesh entwined. Cedric met its strike with a shield, sparks flying as claws scraped steel. Elara cried out, rushing to drag Alaric back, but he pushed her aside, stepping closer to the creature. His sword trembled in his hand, glowing faintly as though feeding on the curse within him. The mentor shouted, "Only he can face it. Its hunger is bound to his fate." Alaric closed his eyes, forcing his fear into rage. "If it seeks judgment, then let it face mine." He swung his blade, striking into the phantom mass, his scream echoing through the cavern. For a moment, the beast howled, writhing in fury, and the ground shook as though the mountain itself rejected the fight. The beast dissolved into mist with a final roar, leaving silence heavy in its place. Alaric fell to his knees, his blade dim once more, his body trembling. Elara rushed to his side, her hands clutching his shoulders. "You could have been killed," she sobbed. Cedric lowered his shield, breathing heavily but nodding with pride. Yet he was not. The curse did not consume him, it obeyed him. The cloaked mentor's eyes burned with both fear and awe. That power is both salvation and ruin. Which path it takes depends on the choices you make. Alaric lifted his head, his face pale, but his eyes sharper than before. "Then I will choose, even if it destroys me." Silence followed, broken only by the dripping of water into the cavern pool. Emerging from the tunnels, they reached the highlands where the wind cut like knives. Below, the kingdoms spread out, banners flying above the distant castle. Elara's eyes filled with both hope and dread. "It still stands," she whispered. Cedric tightened his grip on his sword. But for how long? The cloaked mentor turned his gaze to the horizon. The true enemy waits not in shadows, but upon the throne. Alaric's breath caught. "You mean betrayal still festers in the court?" The mentor nodded grimly. "The ghost knight seeks vengeance, but his curse was born of blood spilled in betrayal by those who ruled." The wind howled, carrying their silence across the cliffs, as though the land itself mourned the sins of its rulers. That night, they entered a small hamlet, seeking food and rest. Villagers stared with suspicion, whispers spreading of strange shadows and cursed soldiers. A child pointed to Alaric, whispering, "He carries the ghost's mark." Elara pulled Alaric's hood over his face, but the murmur had already taken root. Cedric growled, "Fear spreads faster than fire." The cloaked mentor sighed heavily. "The people sense what we try to hide. Secrets cannot remain buried." Alaric's voice cracked. Then I am cursed not only by the night, but by the people I swore to protect. He lowered his head, the weight of exile pressing down heavier than chains. As they left the hamlet, the mysterious ally appeared once more, leaning against a broken wall with a sly grin. The kingdom already fears you. Why fight for them? Alaric stepped forward, rage in his eyes. Because fear is not enough to abandon them. The owl's voice dripped with charm. They will call you monster, not savior. But with me you can command their fear and turn it into power. Cedric spat on the ground. A serpent speaks honeyed words before it strikes. Elara shivered, torn between mistrust and temptation. The cloaked mentor's voice was grim. Beware him, for his path is shadow wrapped in silk. The ally smiled thinly, the firelight flickering across his sharp features. The ally led them into the ruins of an old fortress, promising answers. Inside, broken banners of fallen houses swayed in the wind. Elara whispered, "This place reeks of sorrow." Cedric growled, "And of lies." The ally spread his arms. This was once the stronghold of the knights who swore loyalty. Here, betrayal was born. Alaric stared at the shattered throne in the hall, his heart thundering. The cloaked mentor's eyes narrowed. "You bring us here to break him, not guide him." The owl's smile twisted. To reveal truth is never to break, it is to liberate. Alaric clenched his jaw, torn between rage and the desire to uncover the secrets of his curse. The owl's words rang like knives as he circled them. The ghost knight was betrayed not by enemies, but by his king. "The same blood runs in your veins, Alaric." Silence crashed down, heavier than stone. Elara gasped, her hands trembling. Cedric's face hardened, his knuckles white on his blade. The cloaked mentor shut his eyes, his silence an admission of truth long buried. Alaric's voice broke, filled with anguish. "Then I carry not only his curse, but his blood." The owl's smile was cruel. "Now you understand, vengeance is your birthright." Alaric fell to his knees, the weight of revelation shattering him. Elara rushed forward, holding him, her tears mixing with his. The truth had been revealed, and it changed everything. The castle drums thundered across the valley, and banners snapped in the iron wind as villagers fled behind shuttered doors. Alaric watched the dark clouds gather over the battlements, feeling the vow in his chest tighten like a chain. Cedric said, "Steel holds only if the heart that swings it does." Elara touched Alaric's wrist, her voice soft but steady. "Do not let the curse speak louder than you." The cloaked mentor studied the ramparts, his eyes cold with old sorrow. "The walls will not fall to stone, but to secrets." From the broken road, the mysterious ally approached with a courteous bow that felt like a blade. "I have a gate that opens when truth is spoken," he purred. Cedric lifted his sword. "We do not bargain with a storm that smiles." The ally laughed. "Then, drown in honor." The air tightened as the distant bell tolled. Alaric said, "If there is a gate, I will take it, but I will not sell my soul to use it." The mentor nodded once. "Then you must pay with courage." The wind tasted of ash and coming thunder. Far beyond the walls, a pale blue glow rose like memory reborn. The ghost knight was coming. The blue fire spilled across the ditch as the ghost knight stepped through the mist, armor whispering with every motion. Soldiers on the wall fell to their knees, some in prayer and some in terror. Elara said, "Do not draw first blood." Cedric's jaw worked. "If it charges, I break it." The mentor raised his staff, voice low. "Wait for the choice." The ghost turned its hollow gaze to Alaric, and the wind stilled as if the world held breath. A voice older than grief filled the road. "Blood betrayed me. Blood must answer." Alaric stepped forward, fury and pity warring in his eyes. "I will answer, but not with the kingdom's throat." The owl's chuckle snagged the air. "Mercy is a coin that buys defeat." Alaric said, "Mercy is a torch that shows the trap." The ghost's sword lifted, made of smoke and memory. For a heartbeat, Alaric saw a living man beneath the ruin, A night laughing in sunlight, then only frost and iron will. Choose, the ghost breathed. Thunder rolled. The portcullis rattled as if the castle itself shivered. Alaric lifted his blade and pointed not at the ghost, but at the walls. "Open the gate," he shouted. "We fight the rot within." The captain hesitated, then signaled, and chains screamed. The Allah's eyes narrowed. Bold, dangerous, delicious. Cedric barked orders as soldiers formed ranks, shields locking with the old rhythm of courage. Elara moved among them, tying white strips to wrists, her voice calm. "Stand for one another." The mentor traced a circle in dust, setting a watch of symbols that smelled like winter rain. The ghost watched, unreadable, as if weighing a scale the living could not see. "Your blood opened doors to my death," it murmured. Alaric said, "Then my blood will close them." The gate groaned upward. From the courtyard, a company in royal colors advanced, led by a chancellor with eyes like knives. The allies smiled. At last, the feast. Steel met speech as the chancellor began with honeyed poison. "Lay down arms, cousin, and end this childish theater." Cedric said, "Theater ends when truth enters." Elara's stare did not waver. "Name the treachery." The chancellor smiled. "Which one?" Arrows hissed from the parapet, but the runes flared and shattered them like frost. The ally stepped forward, hands raised. "I can still save you," he lied. The ghost surged, sword sweeping a line of cold that rang like a bell. Panic rippled through the court ranks. Alaric advanced, voice like thunder. "The night was betrayed by the throne you polish." The chancellor spat. "A tool that forgot its task." Cedric roared and broke the line. Courtyard erupted. The ghost and Alaric crossed paths without striking, two storms circling the same wound. "Dot!" The mentor shouted, "Hold to purpose!" The world narrowed to breath, step, and promise. The fight funneled toward the dais where a cracked throne waited like a wound. The chancellor drew a slender blade, smiling as if greeting an old friend. "Come, claim your blood," he taunted. Alaric stepped onto the stones stained by forgotten vows. "I claim the debt," he answered. The ghost appeared beside him, silent as snowfall. Elara whispered, "Do not let the curse speak for you." Cedric blocked a strike and gasped, "Finish this." The ally whispered at Alaric's shoulder, sweet as wrath. "Say the word, and I bind the ghost to your will." Alaric breathed once, then raised his blade not to kill, but to swear. "I break the chain with the truth that forged it." He cut his palm and pressed blood to the throne's crack. The runes flared. The ghost cried out, a sound of winter ending. The chancellor lunged and met Cedric's steel. The curse loosened like a frost in sunlight. The hall went still, waiting for the last weight to fall. Dawn poured through the broken roof, washing the hall in pale gold. The ghost stood calmer, edges softening, as if remembering the warmth of life. Alaric faced the chancellor in the ring of fallen banners. "End this," he said. The chancellor sneered. "The kingdom is a ledger. I only balanced it." Cedric advanced, breath heavy. "You wrote the sum in blood." Elara stepped between death and pride, voice clear. "Confess, and let the dead rest." The ally drifted behind the chancellor, eyes lit with cold delight. "Confession is for fools," he murmured. The mentor pressed his staff to the stone. "Truth speaks without permission." The floor answered with an image of the past, showing the knight's last living breath, the order of betrayal, and the smiling clerk who signed it. The chancellor paled. "A necessary cut," he whispered. The ghost looked to Alaric. "Will you carve vengeance or judgment?" Alaric's hands did not shake. "Judgment," he said. The room exhaled. The sentence fell like a bell. Alaric said, "You will answer before the people you bled." Cedric bound the chancellor's wrists with a banner ripped from the wall. Elara nodded once, relief and sorrow braided tight. The ally clapped slowly. "So noble, so predictable. The mentor's gaze speared him. You fed the rot. The ally bowed. I set a table. They brought their hunger. The ghost turned toward the courtyard, the blue around him thinning. The debt fades, he murmured. Alaric stepped beside him. You were more than a weapon. The ghost's helm tilted, as if the memory of a smile tried to return. Then let me end as a knight, he said. The bell in the village answered, soft and living. The hall felt wider, as if grief had loosened its grip on stone. In the courtyard, townsfolk gathered, faces weary and worn. Cedric read the charges in a voice like iron, struck true. Elara spoke of mercy that guards justice, not replaces it. The ally leaned against a pillar, bored and bright. Crowds love endings, he said. The ghost stood tall, edges clear now, as if the telling gave him shape. He lifted his sword in salute to the living. Guard what we failed to keep, he said. Alaric raised his blade to touch the ghosts, steel to spirit. We will, he answered. The mentor's staff rang once on stone. Witness, he intoned. The banners stirred, though the wind was still. The chancellor bowed his head at last, words too small to hold his deeds. The crowd murmured like rain. Peace hovered like a bird unsure of landing. The ally smiled and turned away. I will find a kingdom that enjoys sharper music, he said. Cedric stepped to block him. You will answer for the fires you fed. The ally flicked a ring, and shadow curled like ink. Elara grabbed Alaric's arm. Do not follow him into the dark. The mentor whispered, some lessons end only when the student walks away. Alaric nodded. Let him carry his emptiness. We will carry our vow. The ally paused and looked back, amusement fading to something like respect. Do not waste your crown on kindness, he said. Alaric answered, kindness is the point of a crown. The ally vanished into light as thin as a lie. The crowd exhaled as if saved from a story they did not want to finish. When the bell rang again, it sounded like a beginning. The ghost faced the sky, the blue of him turning to morning. I release my oath, he said, and the words unbound the air. Alaric lowered his head. Go with honor, he whispered. Elara's eyes shone wet and fierce. Thank you for standing again so we could learn to stand at all. Cedric thumped his chest with a gauntlet. Ride well, brother, he said. The mentor smiled, small and human. Rest, dut. The ghost stepped back and became a hush of light, a final glint on steel, a calm in the lungs of a weary city. Banners stirred, and then were still. Alaric looked toward the road where trouble grows like wheat. We rebuild, he said. The wind carried his promise across roofs and fields, and the day did not argue.